September the 1st, 1997 is a day I will never forget for as long as I live. It was a day my life was to change forever. Having returned from operations in Bosnia, already having gone blind in one eye, I woke up in bed in my quarter in Tidworth. I opened my eyes and I could not see. I closed my eyes again, opened them again, and turned my head toward where my wife lay, gently sleeping next to me. I couldn't see her. Singularly, one of the most scariest things that ever happened to me in my life. Initially, I just closed my eyes and pretended it was a bad dream, but I knew it wasn't at the back of my mind. I knew I'd lost my sight. So trying not to wake her, I gently slipped from the bed and navigated and felt my way around the bed and the bedroom to go downstairs like I always do in the morning when I'm at home to make her a coffee. As I was pondering this and navigating myself around the house as it gently slept in the morning, I had no idea of what was going to happen to me. I went into the kitchen, I'll never forget this, and I made a coffee, or tried to make a coffee for my wife, pretending things were normal. I could find the kettle, I could find the things around the kitchen, no problems. But the problem became preparing the coffee, sort of pouring the hot water into the cup. My hands were shaking that much. I did not realise I had the spoon upside down, and I just poured hot water into the milk. I poured it all over my hands, I burnt my hands. I tried not to scream. I filled the cup as best I could, and then I navigated myself back up the stairs to the bedroom. I put the cup next to Karen on my bedside table and pretended that it was normal. What I didn't realise was she was sitting bolt upright in bed watching me. And she said to me, "You've got something to tell me, haven't you?" And I burst into tears and I said, "Sweetheart, I can't see. I'm blind." I was 33 years old. I was a dynamic soldier. I was a professional soldier. I loved being a soldier. Not only did I have a job that I loved, I had a family that was dependent on me. In my mind, I thought, how on earth am I going to be able to support these people? What role, what use am I going to be blind? I lost my sight whilst carrying out my duties as a peacekeeping soldier as part of the IFOR force in Bosnia in 1997. It was eerie. I remember driving around villages, seeing villages and houses and all the normal buildings you'd associate with civilized life, totally devoid of people. Houses with their doors blown open, still with tea and coffee cups and breakfast tables still laid up, washing still on the line, children's toys scattered down the paths. And it didn't take the brains of anybody to realise the smell that was coming from the gardens and the houses with that of the inhabitants. We had to stabilise and find and locate evidence of what had been happening with the ethnic cleansing. A lot of the victims in Bosnia were buried in mass graves. We had to go and locate and find these areas in mass graves, and they were found in the bottom of mines. Hundreds of people that had been thrown in the bottom of mine shafts to be covering up the crime that had been committed, or they've been quite simply bulldozed into the ground. Scenes very reminiscent and similar to that of Belsen and Dachau and Auschwitz. And as a senior soldier, I put myself in a position where my young men and women under me, I did not want them to see some of the horrors of what happened. So invariably, I went in there and helped the archaeologists and the medical people exhume the bodies. I'm a human being, and when I see women and children that have been brutally murdered, I immediately thought of my own family back in England. And I unashamedly will admit that I cried. As a result of that, with a bit of sweat, a bit of crying in the eyes, I rubbed my eyes. That simple act infected not my eyes, but my optic nerves at the back of my eyes. I was busy with my job out there and very professional in what I was doing. I didn't have time to go and seek medical help. When I realised that my right eye was starting to lose its sight, I was starting to go blind in my right eye, I hid this from everybody.
My name is Carl Adamson. I joined the British Army when I was 21. I was injured when I was 24 and a half. I was injured in Northern Ireland. I lost my sight in Northern Ireland. At first it was very uncomfortable. The first night we was there, when we arrived there, it was bonfire night. And as you could well imagine, all the fireworks and stuff going off, it was pretty scary. But after a while you tended to get used to it, and it become a normal way of life after, say, 6 months of it. I was coming to the end of the tour in Northern Ireland. I was looking forward to the next part because I'd heard the Cheshires were moving on to Kenya after it, and I was looking forward to moving and trying something else after 2 years and going to experience the opportunities in Kenya. Strangely enough, I was having my hair cut at the time, and in the actual building where the army stayed, the army camp as such, and it was about 9:30 in the morning, and the corporal come rushing in, and he said, "Adamson, Private Adamson, come on, you have to go, leave your haircut, you have to come with us straight away." Got out the chair and went straight to the snatch vehicle. So we was in the snatch vehicle. There was a bit of confusion because there wasn't enough seats in the snatch vehicle, and I explained this to the corporal, and he said to me, "Oh, just get in it, we have to go, just get in it." So I just sat in the middle. There was supposed to be 4 seats in the back of it, but there was one lad sat in one seat, another lad sat in the other seat, another lad sat at the back, and 2 lads sat at the back, and I sat in the middle of them, but I had no seat down. So we set off driving, and as we was driving, we got told we was going to try and stop a car, put a roadblock on a car what was apparently a suspicious car what was going to cross the border. And we were moving fairly fast to try and get to this car. We come up. I remember coming up to a farmyard. I remember seeing this farmyard, and as we start going through the farmyard, it becomes very muddy and wet and slippy. And for some strange reason, he started speeding up. And then I was just talking to my friend and mentioned that he's speeding up a little bit here. He's going a little bit too fast for my liking, considering he had no seatbelt on, and I was a bit concerned because I've been in these snatch vehicles before and realised not the safest of vehicles, so I was a little bit concerned about that. And the next 30 seconds, minute, it was just, I could see the snatch vehicle just completely going out of control. He seemed to be losing control. And as I looked into the distance, it rolled into an embankment, it went up into an embankment, the Land Rover overturned, I was flung out the top of the Land Rover, out the, where they do top cover as it's called, and I come out the Land Rover, and I thought to myself, for 10 split seconds, I was completely outside the Land Rover. I looked down, and looked up, and I could see the Land Rover rolling back down the embankment into the ditch it was lay. So all of a sudden the Land Rover rolled back, and I just felt the full weight of the Land Rover hit me on top of my face. The next thing I remember, I was just screaming and completely screaming. But the problem with that was there was 600 soldiers in the back of the Land Rover, and they didn't have any idea where I was. And they was all a bit shook up and screaming and stuff, and they was all wondering just to get out the Land Rover. And when they got out the Land Rover, as they were getting out of it, they had no idea I was underneath it. So every time they were getting out of it, they was actually putting more pressure on the Land Rover, what was lay on top of me. And every time they did that, it seemed to break another bone in my face. So when they eventually got out, someone had noticed I was actually underneath the Land Rover. So what they did, they got, because the army is very professional, they got some car jacks and stuff. And they lifted the Land Rover up. And I was constantly awake at this time. I could remember every single episode of it. So they lifted the Land Rover up, and I was in great pain. And at the point my face had felt like it had been cut in half. One side it had gone left and one side of it had gone right. But then all of a sudden it all just sunk. All the bones in the middle of my face all just sunk. And I remember him taking my helmet off and me putting my hand on top of my head, and there was just a big hole in the top of my head. And it was crazy, and there was blood everywhere, and it wasn't a very nice experience. But in the distance, in the very far distance, even though my eyes were damaged and it was down in my cheek somewhere, I could see a blue light coming in the distance, which was the ambulance. And it seemed like forever, but it must have only been 5 or 10 minutes. And then I could see the ambulance coming. I remember the other soldiers putting a drip in me, a saline drip, just to try and keep me till the ambulance coming, because I was losing a lot of fluid and stuff. And when the ambulance arrived, I just remember collapsing and falling in a paramedic's arms, and the rest of it was that was the end of it. As I thought I died. I thought that was the end.
My wife found out about an organisation then called St Dunstan's, and she'd, unbeknown to me, filled out these forms and sent off to St Dunstan's, who help blind ex-servicemen and women. Now, as we know, it's called Blind Veterans. I went to Brighton, to our centre in Brighton, to undergo an assessment for my blindness. I was still serving in the army, and I was extremely frightened. I got down to the centre where they met me. I had no idea at all of what to expect. The first thing that happened was a member of the nursing team came down, and she got hold of me by the shoulders, because I stood there and shook. She cuddled me, she gave me a kiss, and she said, "Billy, you are not alone." Because when I lost my sight, I thought I was the only blind serviceman in the world. Now, blind veterans look at an individual and tailor their training to that individual. What they did to me, they found out my background of being Royal Horse Artillery. They took me down to the local riding school at Rottingdean, and they threw me on the back of a horse. And I'll never forget that day. Full gallop across the Sussex Downs, clinging to the back of a horse at full gallop. I could hear the horse breathing, galloping, and its hooves hitting the floor, and I was part of that animal. A sense of freedom, and I wasn't blind anymore. I could see through the horse's eyes and the horse's body. And that was the first bedrock or building block in my rehabilitation.
Hopefully I can move on to employment and get back into the normality of having a job and holding it down and working alongside other people in, I wouldn't say normal circumstances, because I will need help, but I'd like to move on into an environment where I feel comfortable working and can be a producer member in a factory or wherever I'm going to work, hopefully in sports and fitness, hopefully. that's my dream, to work in sports and fitness. So I am now 38, so it's been quite a while. So I'm just looking forward to the opportunities life throws at me now, so see where it takes me.
Never ever forget these words from my wife and children when I returned home. When I got back after the first 2 weeks at Brighton, my wife got hold of me, she covered me with the kids around her, and she said, "Kids, the old Billy's back." I had spirit back in my body. Mr. Depression had been kicked out. It wasn't an easy road. It isn't an easy road, and I won't say it is. There are days when you do get upset, but you can get over that with friends and support and loving family. And from that day forth, I never looked back, and I strove to make something of my life.